What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the DFS Army Killshot MMA podcast. We're looking at UFC 273, Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie. Let's do this. All right, I got the GOAT, the MMA betting GOAT himself, the sleeveless one, Big Marley here with me. We're taking a look at UFC 273. We're going to go through all of the fights on the card, starting with the prelims, all the way down to the multiple main events. Now, Big Marley, before we even get into this, why did Volkanovski Zombie get lead billing on this? I think you could have given lead billing to a couple of different fights. Certainly, Jan Sterling seems to me like it should have been the lead, no?
I think they usually go by weight class. So if there's two title fights, it goes to the higher weight, unless it's something like big time fight. I'm cool with it. I mean,
I have no idea. Like I'm genuinely interested. I mean, either one could have been. I'm thinking, well, I did not know this. They go by the. You think they go by the weight class?
Yeah. But it could be one of those where like you're all hyped up at the end of Jan Sterling, like, wow, that was a great night. And then you're, oh wait, we still got one more. That's right. Because I mean, I could definitely see Sterling Jan being more of the people's main event, but really the people are there for Khamzat. He's the star of the show. So that's only a 3-rounder. So it's got to be the third to the top. But we got 3 awesome fights on this card, and they're all going to soak up a ton of DraftKings. So that's what I'm excited to talk about, because it's hard to get different this week. And I like them just as much as everybody else does. So hopefully you can talk some contrarian takes into my head.
I mean, I don't think you're going to find your contrarianism up at the top. All those fights look good. I could see a fade of Petr Yan in favor of some of the other spend ups. And if that's the way I was going, that would be the one guy I would fade. Like, let me tell you something. If Chimaev is on the card, he is in my lineup. Okay, let me clarify that at the beginning. I don't care what anybody ever said. If Chimaev is on the card, he's in my lineup, right? That just happens. Volkanovski, kind of the same. He's on the card, he's in your lineup. So, you know, if there's one to fade, it's Petr. So we'll see about that one. We'll see if we can figure out some interesting ways to get unique. But let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, I got to say, it is a crazy weekend for DFS in general. We've got MLB opening day. It just started yesterday. Masters ongoing. An insane week of NASCAR. 3 races. This is a time to get signed up for DFS Army. Do it now. We've got a special going for MLB opening day. Promo code opening day gets you 50% off whatever your first month, your first week, whatever you choose to do. You got to go to dfsarmy.com and get signed up using promo code opening day. Do it now. We don't have 50% off deals. And by the way, we have an MLB system, Big Marley, that you don't need to know very much. Watch my videos on it. I don't want to know who the players are. I don't want to know any of it. It's a simple method that works. Check out my videos.
Yeah, that's perfect for me. I don't know any of the MLB players, and I think it's almost better that way. If you follow the sport enough, like stat-wise, because you don't have any, favorites that you're just kind of biased against or biased towards. So I've been doing well in NASCAR lately because I don't know any of these drivers. All I've been doing is going in, looking at the notes on Sunday morning. I'll go in, look at the Discord, because they're always talking about how many DOMs you should use in there. And then I've been making 20 lineups in like the $4. And I think I'm 4 out of 6 in this last 6 weeks. In the last like 2 of the last 3, I thought I was going to take down the tournament. And then 20 minutes later, I end up losing a bunch of hundreds. And but it's been nice. I mean, it's just nice. I don't have a single driver that's a favorite of mine. So that's cool, because MMA is completely different. I've been watching these guys for so long now. It's like I'm a little biased towards some people like, Cowboy or Du Bronx, people like that. So I don't have that in these other sports.
Yeah, it's nice to not have inherent biases in what you're doing. And obviously NASCAR, DFS Army NASCAR is ridiculously good. Come on. It's probably the sport with the biggest edge in DFS. But I love the system for baseball. It's perfect for me too. I don't want to learn player names. and I just want to stack. And the domination station optimizer makes it so easy and so simple and so repeatable. It really only takes me 5 minutes to set up my lineups for the day, and that's it. I don't have to think, and I like that. I like a system. All right. Let's dive into this card, Big Marley. I'm excited. And the first fight of the night, we've got Julio Arsey taking on Daniel Santos. Arsey is a slight favorite in this one, -175, with Santos coming back at +165. And this is actually an interesting enough fight for DraftKings purposes. Again, just because these guys, I think they're just going to be generally low owned. But the fight goes to distance prop is a not that great for scoring purposes, -135. And only one thing I'm going to say, Big Marley, before I throw it over to you is, listen, Julio Arsey's had a bunch of fights in the UFC. None of them have scored very well. That's all. I mean, Santos being a newcomer, I don't know too much about him. What do you know about these guys?
So yeah, Santos, I mean, we haven't even seen Santos in the last like 2.5 years, so it's kind of hard to know what we're going to get from him. He didn't look bad in the film that I did see, but it's also against weak competition. He's got 4 knockouts. 3 of them were from spinning techniques. So it's really hard to rely on those working, especially when you get to the UFC level. I feel like he's already hitting above average there, so I wouldn't expect that here. But he does have power. I could see him keeping the striking close. I just don't know where to really give him any edges over Arsey. I think Arsey is the better all-around fighter, going to be a little higher paced in the cage, landing the harder shots. I think he's more likely to get takedowns as well. I just don't really see that being the case. I think we get a 15-minute striking match here. And at 9K, Arsey is just going to be priced out of my lineups early. He just doesn't do enough. He has 8 fights in the UFC, and only one of those fights would he have scored more than 10x that 9K price. And that was only 97 points. On this card, 97 still probably not going to get it done. So I think we need an early finish, really a first-round knockout from Arsey. Second round, maybe you're flirting with the optimal lineup. I just don't think so. So he's mostly a fade for me. And I would rather just take my shot on Santos because he is cheap, $7,200. If he wins, I think it would most likely be a knockout, and he would score well that way. If he does keep it close and just wins a split decision type fight, I don't know that he would score enough to get it done. Probably not. But he's cheap, and he allows us to get to the favorites that we want in our lineup. So I do like Santos for some lineups. I think he's in play in all formats, really. But I'm going to pick Arsey to get the job done. I think he wins 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm ignoring Arsey for DraftKings purposes, for betting purposes, any of that. I'm not interested. He does not score well, or he hasn't scored well traditionally. Obviously, we talked a little bit off air about like, hey, how can I get different on this card? This is one way, right? You know, anybody can knock anybody out at any time. You never know what could happen. And if Arsey somehow comes out, I just don't know how a 135-pounder comes out and gets the 60-second knockout that he's going to need to be in the nuts. Like, he needs to finish it in the first round because of his fighting style. Even a second round finish probably doesn't get it done, especially with the 9K plus guys looking at pretty comfortable 100 plus type scores. So it's going to take something unique or crazy for Arsey to get there. I'm out on that. With Santos,
even if Arsey was like $8,500, I still probably wouldn't want to use
right.
him.
It'd be like, but at 9K with the expense, no.
Yeah,
it's easy fade. You can't play everybody. With Santos, he's just in the mix at +160. You know, whatever. Those odds are good enough. A winning that, all right. You know, he hasn't had losses. I don't know if he's very good, but he's just throwing in the underdog mix for GPPs. I think you could actually probably play him in cash. I don't love it, but I think he's going to be hanging around for 3 rounds of striking, and he has as good a chance as winning as anybody at that price range. So even somebody I might consider in cash. All right, let's move on. Next up, second fight of the night. Another one. Got Kay Hansen taking on Piera Rodriguez. Kay Hansen, slight underdog, +112 odds. Rodriguez come at, now, this says her last name is Giunta, but I'm calling her Rodriguez. I don't know what this is all about. But Rodriguez, slight favorite at -122, Big Marley. And for the most part, this seems to be a striker versus grappler matchup. What can you tell me about the fighting styles? What did you see from Rodriguez that makes you excited about her, if you are at all? I don't know.
No, I'm not excited about her because I do think she is going to be mostly looking to strike in this match. She had 3 takedowns in her Contender Series fight. and she shot for a bunch of them. So you would think she's more of a wrestler, but that's just not what you saw leading into the UFC. I think she's a pretty good striker, and I think she has a big edge on the feet here. Maybe she mixes in a takedown or two, but I think she can clearly win the striking game here, and her game plan should just be not to get taken down. I think Hansen's not a good enough wrestler for me to think she can even go out there and win 2 rounds with wrestling. I don't see her winning the striking games either. So I think she really needs a submission, and for DraftKings, she needs a submission as well. This is just a fight I'm not interested in. I don't think the submission comes on either side. If it doesn't come in round 1, then it might not be enough action to even care if it's round 2 or round 3. They are right in the mid-range, so we don't have to have 100 from them. But I just don't see this being a real exciting fight. And if Pierre is able to keep this fight on the feet, then I think she wins all 3 rounds, probably gets 80 points, something like that. And that's just not going to cut it. That's how I see the fight going. Maybe she can get a knockout. She has some good hands. Maybe Hansen can get a submission, but we're really relying on those for them to be a lock on the optimal lineup in the second fight of the night. So mostly a fade for me, but I'm going to pick Rodriguez.
Yeah, this one's pretty gross. Again, if Hansen's winning, she probably is winning by submission. And if she did it in the first round, at that price, she's probably in the nuts. I'm looking up the Hansen by submission. So here it is. I mean, this is kind of what you got to go by. Hansen by submission, not even in round 1, but just by submission is plus 465, Big Marley. So, you're talking about a 10%, maybe an 8% chance of that happening.
17%?
No, it's definitely not 17%.
465?
Hang on. I'll bring up my implied probability calculator now. 17, you have that? No. Hold on. Now I need to bust out the calculator. But in general, I look at that percentage. And what is it? Plus 475, right? 475. Oh, yeah, shit, man. You're fucking goat. That's why you're the betting goat. 17%. How did I get that wrong? Oh, plus 500.
Still seems
420%. Yeah.
A little high. I'd rather.
Yeah, that seems really high. Like, I'm surprised. So let's say she has a 17% implied probability. Take the VIG out of that. 14% chance of something happening, right? If you're going to roster her, if you're MME, if you're making 150, have 10% exposure to that possibility of the quick sub. And that's about it. If Rodriguez, who's shown that she goes for takedowns in the previous fight, what if she goes for a takedown here and Hansen just locks in a sub? She's from Venezuela. That is not a place where the training is known to be elite level. That's where you get these women who go down with Diana Belbita and allow her to armbar them. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the ones that come from weird spots. So, all right.
I heard Rodriguez training with Dern, and she's hanging with her on the mat. So I think that's a good training partner for this.
Yeah, that does not bode well at all for Kay Hansen. If that's is she? Oh, yeah.
I just heard that. I don't know.
All right, that doesn't bode well at all if that's the case. So it looks pretty bad. Anyway, pretty fadeable. All right. Fight number 3 on the prelims. We've got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on Joshua Fremd, with Hernandez coming in at minus 185 and the comeback on Fremd at plus 175. And Big Marley, this is an interesting fight. And if my screen will load, the inside the distance prop is surprisingly high on this fight. And as you can see, my screen will not load, but it is fairly high. What's the inside the distance prop on this one?
Minus 500. One of the highest on the card. If not the highest on the card. But yeah, great GPP fight to target because of that. Both of these guys can finish the fight. Hernandez is the more well-rounded guy. I think he is more likely to look for takedowns here, more likely to have success on the mat, get a submission. But this Fremd dude, he looks like a big guy for 185, and he's got power as well. He's got the more one-punch power. We've seen Hernandez get knocked out by Holland. I feel like Fremd has more one-punch power than him. So I think this is a live underdog here where I am interested in it. Hernandez just comes out so hot in his fights that it's just likely that it does not go to a decision. That's why we're getting the minus 500. So I think both sides of this fight are great because Hernandez will go a little bit overlooked because he's 8.7K, but he has a good shot at the finish. So I'm okay going overweight to him at maybe, mid 20% or 20% or so.
Wait. Hold up, because this is really important. This is a high inside the distance prop. is this when you this is a fight to load up on. Like how much exposure to this fight overall are you looking at for this card? Like, are you setting this 80%? I want one in almost every lineup. How are you doing?
No, not 80. I feel like I'm going to be closer to like 65, 70% of my lineups with this one. But it'll be more on the Frimmed side. I ended up picking Frimmed as my pick here. The odds kind of talked me into it, but I think he's live for the knockout here. The DraftKings salary also talked me into it because he helps me get up to the Chimaevs and those guys. But I think he'll be popular for that reason. I still want to try and be overweight to both guys, though. But if I'm making one lineup, Frimmed has a good chance of being in there, I would say.
Yeah, generally, I totally agree. Listen, it's a fight that has middling salaries a little bit. Even Fluffy is 8,700, which is fine. Like, you could have some studs and an Anthony Hernandez in your lineup. You could afford it. And Fremd, of course, we're looking for any underdogs that are in a fight with a high finish ratio. I mean, that's what you want on DraftKings. I don't really know. It's interesting. Hernandez is more of a grappler. He had a lot of takedowns in the UFC. It's kind of interesting how his career has gone. The UFC component of it, like, he had
a bunch of takedowns against Jun Young Park, I believe his name was, and then submitted him as well, I believe.
Was that Stun Gun Park? Stun Gun? Was it?
I don't know what his nickname is, but just being on the bottom of Rodolfo Vieira and surviving that first round is impressive as well. So I just don't see Fremd having any ground success here. I think that would be the Hernandez side, but I don't know. I think we could get a finish in round 1 or round 2 on either side of this fight. So load up both ways. But I know that I have more lineups with Fremd than I do Hernandez right now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out why the prop for the inside of distance prop is as high as it is. It seems too high. -350, -400, depending where you look.
Fluffy only been to decision one time. I don't know that Fremd has been to many either. So it's just more of their fighting styles. The high pace from Hernandez, which leads to a high score on DraftKings as well. 3 of Fremd's 11 fights went to a decision.
I kind of like the fight goes to decision prop. It seems too low.
Well, if that happens, then we definitely don't want 80% in our
No, I'm just saying, as a contrarian approach, you do one and then you bet the other way. So you protect yourself that way. All right. Next up, we've got Alexei Olynyk taking on Jared Vanderaa. This is a remake of a fight that was supposed to have a couple weeks ago with Olynyk and Latifi. So now we get a possibly less good Vanderaa. Olynyk +100, Vanderaa -110 right now, Big Marley. And I mean, I think at this point, 44-year-old Olynyk, we know what we're going to get out of him. And I still think he can win a fight. I do, Big Marley. I still think and I think this might be the guy that he could win a fight against. It's got to be really low level. It's got to be on the Mo Green level of heavyweight. It's got to be on the doesn't beat Andrea Arlovsky level of heavyweight. The most bare minimum requirement for being UFC level is beating Arlovsky when you fight him. And that's what we get with Jared Vanderaa. Could it happen here? Could the boa constrictor do it one more time?
Yeah, I'm picking him too. I mean, guy's got 46 submissions on his record. If he gets Vanderaa down, I don't know that Vanderea's getting back up, and the fight might just end in that first round. He might submit him with something Vanderea's never trained against before. And if he wins in that first round, I think at 8,100, he's got a good chance at the optimal lineup. So I do like Alexei Olynyk. But the issue is he could get knocked out in that first round. And if he doesn't get the submission in that first round, then I think he's going to lose the fight, whether that's Vanderaa just winning the striking rounds 2 and rounds 3, or getting a knockout in one of those 2 rounds. And they're both 8,100. So this is another great GPP fight to target. And since they're both 8,100, man, I would really hate to have an Olynyk lineup and then the other 5 spots be correct, but I don't have that lineup with the Vanderaa. So I'm just going to take the coward's way out on this one.
Oh, this is weak sauce.
I'm going to put Vanderaa in there as well.
Take a stand.
I probably have about 20, 25% of each.
Take a stand.
if I'm making a single entry, it's going to be the Olynyk side. I am picking him first round submission. It's just he's 44 years old. I can't really trust in him that much. Van Der is taking this fight on short notice as well. It's another reason to like Olynyk. But I also think Olynyk will be the more popular one of the two. So I don't know. I'm just going to even it out. I'm not going to be all in on this fight because I don't want to throw 50% of my lineups away, but I'm thinking around the 20% each. If I was going to throw it in a single entry, I'd be fine throwing in one of those lineups, but it would be an Olynyk side.
I will be taking a little bit more of a principled stand here.
My FOMO would just kill me too much if I had the wrong side and the other would have been on the nuts.
Yeah,
you know,
that does happen. But listen, you're correct in the sense. The fight inside of this is minus 375. So we're talking about, again, 75% chance of a finish here per the line odds. And one way or the other, this fight's probably going to score pretty well. I think Olynyk, like I said, this is the kind of fighter that Olynyk is going to submit. This is the guy that these are the types of guys that he beats. And he doesn't have the big neck. He's 1 week, 2 weeks preparation. Like, if you're preparing, if you know you're going up against Alexei Olynyk, you can game plan, like, show me the anaconda, show me these 3 moves, show me how it's done. I'm not sure that you can prepare for that in 2 weeks if you're Jared Vanderaa. I think he finds a way to get him down. I think he finds a way to submit him. And I think Olynyk has a shot at scoring 100. 95 to 100, which will probably be in the nuts. So I really like it. I'm going to take a stand. I agree with you, though. You got to get some Vanderaa just in case he gets that finish. But I'm going to take a little bit of a stand here. I'm probably going to have double my Olynyk exposure than I will Vanderaa. So there will be FOMO. But shit, that happened to me last week. You know, I had the nuts lineup except for one. And I was like, how did I not hit that one? I don't know. Like, how did it not happen? I don't know. Everybody else got it. I was like, how did I miss it? It's like, it was just weird last week. That shit happens all the time. What are you going to do? All right. Next up, Big Marley. This is the fight. Another one that you need to get this right to win this card. And it sucks that you do because it's a really weird fight. Mike Malott taking on Mickey Gall. Malott is coming in at minus 165 with Mickey Gall coming back at plus 155. And Big Marley, fight goes the distance. Fight ends inside the distance, minus 240. Another high likelihood of a finish fight. And these two guys, I mean, Mickey Gall, I don't know what the hell he's about. Mike Malott, I know even less about him. Hasn't fought a whole lot. So how do you see this fight going down?
Yeah, it's a hard one to tell because Malott, like, he's been around fighting since 2011, but before 2020, the last time we saw him was 2017. Before that was 2015, then 2014. So it's just hard to know what we're going to get from this guy. I heard he's the striking coach at Team Alpha Male. So that would lead you to believe he's a pretty good striker, but he has more submissions than he has knockouts. And his submission on the Contender Series was nice, man. I thought he was about to break that guy's neck. He was grabbing it so tight. I mean, so he looks like he can finish the fight anywhere. But there's just not much film on him. And I didn't even go back and watch 2014 film. I just don't know that there's any point in doing that. So in the limited amount of film that I saw, I thought he looked pretty good, but it was like on and off. Like, I'd be like, oh, not bad, not bad. And then he would just look sloppy for a second. I'm like, maybe not. I don't know. So it's just, I'm not sure what to expect from this guy. I think the line, the inside the distance line is so high because of him, though. It's going to be kill or be killed, we're thinking. But I just don't see Gall having any success early unless it's grappling. And if this fight gets into the third round, I don't know how this Malott guy will look in the third round. Maybe that's Gall's time to shine. So I don't know. I'm just going to kind of load up on both sides. I do prefer the Malott side. I picked him to get a TKO, I believe. But it wouldn't shock me to see him submit Gall either. I mean, Sanchez kind of dominated Gall on the mat. I think a lot of people could have success there. So I'm picking Malott, but Gall is one of those cheap guys who could be in the mix. He allows us to get to the guys that we want. So I'll get some exposure to both sides on this one. I feel like I'll be around 20% on each guy. But if I was going to make one lineup, I would rather take the Malott side because I think he could maybe make my lineup different. That's going to take me away from one of the top three guys. And I think that's going to be the path to victory. It's going to be one or two of those top three guys in the winning lineup. So we're going to have to pick the right one or two to fade there, I think.
Mickey Gall is such a weird situation, man. It's so weird because he never should have been in the UFC. We all know that. But here he is. So normally a guy would have had like a couple of years to season themselves to see if they belonged in the UFC. But, they needed somebody to fight, CM Punk, and here he was. So then I don't really know what to make of him, but he's training all the time. He's improving all the time. He's a big guy for the weight class. That's all good. And like what you said, I'm just going to blindly believe the line odds and the implied probabilities of those, that, hey, they think it's going to be a finish at some point. Great. Cool. I'll deal with that. And I don't think Malott is going to be high owned, Big Marley. I think he's going to be fairly low owned relative to, again, the spend ups. Everybody's going to want to spend all the way up. And then with Gall, he's in the mix. He's another guy I'm throwing in the mix. I'm just tossing him in these plus 170s and plus 165s. There's a bunch of them. High likelihood he scores well. If he finishes, he could get the sub. By the way, what he did to that guy in the Contender Series, the kid on the Contender Series was 21 years old. He didn't belong anywhere near the UFC. He's like a 21-year-old kid fighting in a foreign country, was not trained by like a proper MMA training. I'm familiar with that prospect as well. Like Shimon, he was 21. It's like a kid. So how much am I don't really know if Mike Malott is good either. You got to take sides of this fight, take some Gall. He could win as an underdog. No clue. I don't give a fuck if you're the striking trainer for Alpha Male. You know what? Every time I hear that guy they suck. Like every time this guy's the wrestling trainer and he can't wrestle. I don't know what it is about these coaches from these teams, but when somehow they get into the UFC and they're not very good. Like,
yeah, I mean, the question marks are what make me like Gall more. So,
like I'm not paying.
Yeah, this like the fluffy Hernandez and the Fremd fight. Just, I think those two and the Olynyk fight are the ones where you kind of want to throw money into the pot, take shots on both sides of these fights, and hope that you hit the right combination.
You got to play. You're just going to play these 170, 150 underdogs in this card. That's what you're going to do. Like some of them are going to win. This is not a card where all the favorites win. Some of these underdogs are going to win. And just pick the right one and pick one that might score well. And that's Mickey Gall. Let's give him a 40% chance of winning the fight. Okay. Fine. 35%. Fine. I'll take that. All right. Next up, we've got a little less sexy fight from scoring perspective. Aspen Ladd taking on Raquel Pennington. Again, Aspen Ladd is the underdog here with coming in at plus 155. Rocky Pennington minus 165. Big Marley. And man, Pennington's a little pricey for that minus 165 on DraftKings, and her kind of low scoring potential at 8,900. And Aspen Ladd would have been favored in this fight not long ago. Times are changing.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Pennington's always been towards the top of the division for a long time. I do think it's a real close fight, though. The stats are real close on both sides. I think that Pennington's a slightly better striker, slightly better in the clinch as well. It's just not that the judges would know that there's any slight difference. And I think the striking volume will be very close in this fight. And with Pennington at 8.9K, it's priced too high. So she's a fade for me. I'd much rather target those three chalky guys on the card, or really anyone else other than her and Arsey, to be honest with you. Those are my two biggest fades on the card just because they're priced out of my lineups. She's coming off a second round submission and she only scored 93 points at 8.9K. 93 points, probably not going to get it done. I also don't think she's going to submit Ladd. I think Ladd is actually better on the ground here. And if Ladd can get takedowns, I think that's where the main success would come in. The main scoring would come in for Ladd. She's never scored less than 88 points in a DraftKings win. So I like that. And she's real cheap, 7.3K. That puts Ladd in play in all formats for me. I think this is much closer to a 50-50 fight. I would give a slight edge to Pennington, but the odds talked me into Ladd. I played Ladd. I'll be rooting for Ladd. So she's the one I'm rooting for. I just think it's going to be a split decision type fight either way where you can't complain. And I would much rather hold the underdog ticket going into that decision reading.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Rocky Pennington, no one's going to want to roster her. She's right there, priced next to fighters again that are much, much, much more enticing. Pennington does have like a 93 in her last fight, which is a pretty decent score, all things considered. But it took a second round submission for her to get there. You know, she's been in that 90-ish points range in her career, but at close to 9K, I think you need 100 plus in order to be in the perfect lineup. I don't think it's
especially
there.
on this card.
Yeah, and I don't think it's there. I also think this is a bad matchup for Rocky because I don't think she's going to be able to just take down Aspen Ladd and dominate her with a submission. I don't see it. I don't see that happen. I see Aspen Ladd, although Aspen Ladd looked like shit in her last fight. What the hell was that? What was that?
I think Norma Dumont's pretty good. I'd be picking her over Rocky as well, to be honest.
Maybe
A hard fighter to look good against, but Rocky's a hard fighter to look good against as well. I mean, so it's hard to know what to expect from Ladd. She looked good on the scales for once, so that's good to see. But yeah, I just feel like it's a 52-48 type of fight, and that's not what the line says. So give me Ladd.
I like it. She's married to Torres, right?
Yeah, I don't know about married, but yeah, at least they're together, and they're both on the same card. So
why do they do this with the couples? UFC fucking pulls this all the time. Like, oh, they always take the couples. Like we get them on the same card. It's really interesting. Why? I don't know.
I don't know if it's the couples that prefer that or if the UFC prefers it.
I don't know. Remember the Bays, you know, Cheyenne and JP Bays like on the same card. Like, why are you on the same card?
But at the same time, if Rocky loses this fight, it makes me feel less good about Torres later.
Yeah, I don't know. These are professionals. Torres is coming out and doing her thing.
Yeah,
like,
she'll be fine, but mentally, I mean, it's got to affect you a little bit, right?
A little bit, but you know, not too much.
I don't know. I'm not a fucking fighter. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't know. That's right. I don't know. Who knows? All right. Next up, we've got Yair Rosenstroik taking on Marcin Tybura, with Rosenstroik coming in at -150 and the comeback on Marcin +140. The inside the distance prop. Let's see if we can get that here. Inside the distance -185. Not bad. Not bad. Now, Big Marley, striker versus, you know, hybrid striker grappler Tybura, striker exclusively in Rosenstroik. I think we know that Rosenstroik got some volume issues, but he's also got knockout power. So how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, definitely another good fight to target both sides of. If Rosenstroik wins, it's most likely going to be a knockout. And if it comes in round 1, he's probably on the optimal lineup. If it comes in round 2, I don't know. If it comes around 3, he's off the optimal lineup. And if he wins a striking decision, he's off the optimal lineup as well. So I'm going to be low on Rosenstroik because I think that he'll be somewhat popular with people picking him to get an early knockout here. Tybura does get hurt in most of his fights, and if Rosenstroik lands a clean strike, I mean, I don't know if you're going to be able to recover from that, being Tybura anyways, who has a questionable chin. But if Tybura doesn't get knocked out, I think he wins this fight. I think he can keep it close on the feet, but if he can get one takedown, I think that could be all that it takes to win that round. If not even maybe get a finish. These are heavyweights. You can get a ground and pound or a submission finish. But I see Tybura winning 2 or 3 rounds here on the scorecards. And if this does go the distance, he's the only one who has a shot at being on the optimal lineup. So Tybura is my preferred play of the two. I don't think he's going to score, 100 points or anything like that. But he's an underdog I'm picking to win, so I want to be overweight to the field. And even though Rosenstroik has 100+ upside, I'm gonna take a shot at I don't know that I'm going to fade him. I'll probably fade him with my hand builds, but I want to be under 20%, even if I'm making 150 lineups here, just to be sure that I'm underweight to the field so I can get the guys that I like more.
Yeah, I mean, just some quick stats. Tybura should be a slightly higher volume. He does average 3.6 strikes per minute versus 2.8 for Rosenstroik. Not as much of a gap as I actually would have thought. And the big thing here is Tybura going to be able to get a takedown? I think Rosenstroik's takedown defense has looked pretty decent in the UFC. I mean, that's a 75% number that includes, he fought Blades. Before that, though, he was tough to take down. I think Tybura might have a tough time taking him down, but I don't know if that matters. In the end of the day, it's going to come down to Rosenstroik's probably going to be losing on the cards until he gets the knockout because he's going to have fewer punches landed. Like, that's the math, right? but he could definitely get this knockout. We've seen Tybura rock, so proceed with caution on that one. I don't think that fight scores well. I'm going to be under the field on both fighters personally. That is not a fight that I'm personally looking to get a lot of exposure to. But again, I think that Rosenstroik in particular is definitely live for a one-punch knockout. It could happen at any time.
Yeah, and I think he has 2 that are in that 60-second window, so he could definitely be a slate breaker.
Yeah, gotta get some. But if he's going to be higher owned, if he's over 25%, for example, no, I'm probably going to try to be below that. But not like I'm not going 0 either. He is live for that. You know what? Let's pull up this number here. What's the early knockout prop? Because a lot of times this really tells you the tail of where you want to go. Ends inside the distance. But let's go to Rosenstroik. Rosenstroik by KO.
Plus 225.
Rosenstroik by KO plus 225.
In the first wins in round 1 plus 225. So 30%.
Yeah. If he does that, he's in the nuts.
Yeah, but that's like, I don't know. I feel like that's going to be where the field is at, around 30%. Yeah. So I still want to take under.
Yeah, I would go a little below that too. I don't know he's doing it in the first round. I think it's more likely maybe a little later. So we'll see. All right. Next up. Ian Garry taking on Darian Weeks. Ian Garry's coming in as a plus 335 favorite with the comeback on Darian Weeks at plus 305. Ian Garry, one of the bigger favorites on this card, Big Marley. Now, let's see if we can get a finish prop up on the screen. What's the finish prop on this one? Do you know? Here we go.
I don't.
Inside the distance, minus 155. So a decent chance to end inside the distance. And again, this is another one you're going to have to make some decisions on because Garry is priced up there with Chimaev and Jan and the stud crew. Are you taking shots on Ian Garry here? And how do you see this fight going down in general?
Not really, just because I'd rather get to the studs. Garry had like 107 points or something like that in his DraftKings debut, and that was a first-round knockout. I feel like that's more his ceiling right there because he's not a real high-volume guy. He's a really good striker, throws at good angles. He's got good hands, good kicks as well. And I just think that those are going to end up adding up in this fight where he puts Weeks out in maybe the second or the third round. And I don't think that he scores enough because he's probably not going out there looking to wrestle. And if anyone is looking to wrestle, it's probably going to be Weeks. He had 4 takedowns against Barberena, landed a ton of strikes as well. He scored 75 points in a loss.
That is, by the way, Weeks stands out with these statistics. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, at 7K, I would rather target Weeks because if he's going to win, it's going to be similar to that success. I don't think it's going to be as easy to get Garry down. I think that Garry could submit him on the ground. And I don't think he's going to be able to rack up as much volume because Garry is a dangerous striker. But I do think if Weeks wins, he's scoring more than 10x here, and he could get around 90 or so also. So I'm interested in Weeks, but I am picking Garry to get a second or third round knockout here. I just think his shots are going to add up. They're going to land. They're going to come at angles that Weeks doesn't see coming, and I just think he puts them away. But at 9.2K, I just really am not too interested in using Garry because of those studs. I mean, even if he gets that ceiling 107 or so points, I don't know that that's going to be enough here. So I think the reason to use Garry is just to be different. He's going to be 20 or less percent, where all these other guys are going to be closer to 50% owned. So in a deep GPP only, I think Garry is okay, but I would rather use Weeks and just hope that he can get it done. So dog or pass on DraftKings, but I think Garry gets him.
Number one, pointing out that Sun Tzu is a fan of the lad play, and that is a very ringing endorsement.
Yeah, that makes me feel better, actually.
That does. Fuck yeah. I'm riding with Sun Tzu today on a PGA bet, so we're riding together.
I think Sun Tzu's been pretty high on Pennington in the past as well, so it makes me feel real good.
Yeah, it has happened. So as far as this fight goes, I totally agree. I think Weeks is probably the better play. I don't think he's going to be high owned at all. He has volume. He has takedowns. There's nothing to say he's going to win this fight, but nothing to say he won't either. I mean, they're both neophyte fighters. They both don't have a whole lot of background. Of course, Garry comes in as the more credentialed guy. Sanford MMA is a really, really great preparation, and he's done what he's supposed to, which is win all of his fights so far. But Jordan Williams isn't exactly somebody who is less than. I mean, Jordan Williams is absolutely horrible, so that win is not an impressive win. And I mean, Jordan Williams is losing to Mickey Gall. His best win is a guy who lost to Mickey Gall. We already talked about, we don't know if Mickey Gall is even UFC ready. So for that reason alone, I'm taking the underdog. There's no way I'm laying minus 300 on a completely unproven fighter. And, same deal with DraftKings, man. I'm taking a shot with Weeks here. Guy scored 75 in a loss. Okay. Fine by me. I like a guy like that. All right. Next up. But by the way, I think Weeks will be the lowest owned of these favorites because his odds are less good than the other ones. Like all these 160s and 150s you can get down here in the similar price range. Weeks doesn't stand out. He's plus 305. Like, I don't take that guy. That's the guy who wins you the tournament. When he wins this fight and he's in that's how you get different on the $25 contest. You have Weeks in your lineup and no one played him, Big Marley.
I kind of think that just lineup construction will put more people onto Weeks because they want to get to those top three guys. So I don't think he's as sneaky on this card as he would be without, one of those fights on there.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what the ownership goes to, but yeah, maybe. But I like sneaky weaky. If we can get a little sneaky with him, then I'm in. All right. Next up, we've got Mark Madsen taking on Vince Pichelle. Pichelle's actually a slight favorite here, Big Marley. Minus 122. Madsen plus 112. This fight seems pretty clear cut to me, but Madsen, Greco-Roman grappler, versus Pichelle, who's just he's a wily veteran kind of guy, but really actually bad takedown defense throughout his career, and I think it's gonna be a close one. So how do you see this one going down, Big Marl?
So I think the line should be flipped on this one. I slightly favor Madsen here. I think the biggest edge in this fight is going to be his wrestling. Pichelle was just taken down 4 times by Austin Hubbard, who's not a great wrestler, and Madsen took Hubbard down 8 times. I just think it's a clear wrestling path to victory for Madsen in this fight. I think he can win rounds 1 and rounds 2 with his wrestling. The issue is his gas tank. He just isn't if he does wrestle in those early rounds, he's going to slow down as the fight moves along. I don't think the takedowns will be there when he is gassed, and I think Pichelle would take the 3rd round. But I still would favor Madsen. I think he can hold on long enough. Pichelle's not super dangerous. He's the older fighter, actually, of the two. And Pichelle's only 3 wins. That would put him on the optimal lineup at this price, where fights where he got a first-round knockout, and then the other 2, he had 8 takedowns each. And those scored over 100 points. He's not getting 8 takedowns on Madsen. If anyone in this fight is getting 8 takedowns, it's going to be Madsen. So I'm not too interested in the Pichelle side. He could get the win. I just don't think he's on the optimal lineup at 8.4K. I'd rather take Madsen at 7.8K because I do think he scores more than 10X if he gets the job done. And I think he does win.
You think he's going to 10X this?
Yeah, I think he lands, 7, 8 takedowns. Scores 85, 90 points, something like that.
I could see it. Yeah, I'm on Madsen. I already actually bet Madsen. So, I think you said it correct. Like, Pichelle's takedown defense seems almost non-existent. Sometimes that changes from fight to fight, but I mean, the guy has had a long enough UFC career and it's at like 25%. And Madsen wants to go for takedowns. Now, people talk about Madsen's last fight where he didn't go for takedowns, right? And maybe he doesn't do takedowns anymore. That was against Clay Guida, like a fellow wrestler. And I think that was just part of his plan. Like, hey, he's a wrestler and he's a grappler. I assume that's what it was. I really do. It was the weird fight against Guida. I don't really know. But I'm assuming he was, Guida's a grappler and he was just like, maybe I'll strike with this guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I always feel like these guys who are completely at least looked at as one-dimensional, I feel like they want a matchup where they can go out and show that they're well-rounded. Maybe that was it, but who knows? That's just
maybe it was that, but I don't think he's doing that with Pichelle at all. If Madsen tries to strike with Pichelle, he is going to take an ass whipping.
I mean, I would favor Pichelle in a striking match, but I think Madsen can keep it close.
I think that's the place where Madsen is not winning the fight. Like if you're in this fight, if you're watching this and you have money on Madsen, which I do, Every second that it's standing, I'm like, dude, get a fucking takedown. Yo, go for a takedown. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? That's that's the little cycle in your head. You know what I mean? What are you doing? Go for the takedown. And as soon as he's on top in that comfortable position, you're like, okay, that's the comfort zone. Stay there. Right?
Yeah,
that's what you're watching for.
Got to be the game plan. Pichelle, 25% takedown defense.
Terrible.
You got to try and take this guy down. He's not great at holding guys down. And the more that you go and attempt those wrestling takedowns, it's going to wear him out as the fight goes along. But he was in there with like a broken jaw and gassed out in the third round. He still survived against Hubbard. Even landed some takedowns while he was gassed. So I think that's a good sign. These wrestlers can fight through the fatigue.
Yeah, he should be able to get there. And like I said, I agree with what you're saying, though. The danger for me in this fight is going to be a gassed out Madsen in round 3. Sometimes you come back. Sometimes that guy gets finished. Sometimes he's so gassed that the opponent goes to town and ends up putting up a big score. But beyond that risk, which definitely is there, we've seen Madsen get tired more than once. I think he should be able to win rounds, but with his takedowns. All right, which is why I bet him. And if you want to bet it even better, you take it by decision, get a little more juice on that, because I do not see a finish happening from Madsen at all. So
I wouldn't be shocked to see a submission. I mean, on the regional scene, he has one of the meanest guillotines I've seen. Guy is just powerful. So if he can grab Pichelle's neck, I think he could tap him.
You think a UFC veteran like Pichelle is going to get caught in a guillotine like that by a Madsen guillotine?
I think it was like a standing guillotine, if I remember correctly. It's just that like he was just so strong that it was like there's no getting out of that. But he hadn't really landed it in the UFC yet, so I don't know that he can.
Yeah, I think that's like a regional. That's like I said, that's like the Malott submission that he got against that kid that was nowhere near, not even UFC. That kid wasn't like Bellator. He wasn't LFA ready. This is a 21-year-old kid, probably won a few fights in like the Middle East regionals. And, how are you on the contenders? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, all right, let's move on. Next up, we are getting there, guys. We're almost to the big dogs, but we got one more to go. Tisha Torres taking on Mackenzie Dern. Sunsu, if you're out there, I know you are. I know Sunsu's a big Mackenzie Dern guy, I think. But this one is close to even odds at this point. -117 for Dern, +107 for Torres. And this is a striker versus grappler matchup all the way. Fight goes to decision, -165, Big Marley. So, I mean, how do you see this one going down? Dern has a hard time. I'm going to throw up the stats here in a second, but Dern has a hard time getting takedowns. And she's not that good of a striker. She's an elite grappler, probably going to finish you if she gets you on the ground. But she's not that good at doing that, man. How's she going to get a takedown against Tornado here?
I mean, maybe she just pulls guard. I don't know. Anything that get to the fight to the ground is going to benefit Dern here. And that -165 that the fight goes to a decision, that's all on the Dern side. She's +180 inside the distance, where Torres +750.
You want to hear how nuts that is? The difference between betting. So I went to bet that. I did bet this, right? And I was like, oh, I'm going to take Torres by decision because she's not finishing anyone, right? She ain't finishing anybody. Here it is. Yeah, I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming from Sunsu. I knew it. Know you too well. But my thought is so I'm like, I'm just going to bet her by decision. The difference between by decision or just to win was like, it was -120, +120 versus +130. Like the juice you get for taking the decision prop is so low that it's not worth taking. So I was like, all right, fuck it. I'm just going to bet her to win in case she, who knows what happens. I'm not burning myself out of a W for an extra, 20 basis points. But, I mean, what do you think here? Does Dern have a shot at getting this takedown? Do you think it happens?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it landing on the ground, once or twice. But I don't know. I feel like Torres is good enough to avoid it, get back up. I think she's the better wrestler of the two. She can just use that defensively to stay on the feet. And I think Torres wins this fight on volume, probably all 3 rounds. Dern has improved on the feet, but I just don't think she's good enough to beat Torres there. I think she has to get takedowns here. But if this fight ends inside the distance, it's going to be a Dern submission. If Torres wins, I'd be shocked to see a knockout, and I'd be even more shocked to see her submit Dern. So I think it's got to come by points. She's got to keep this fight on the feet all 3 rounds and really land volume. She had 97 in the decision in her last fight, but that was against Angela Hill, who just kind of is always in high volume fights. Dern won't quite be that easy to put up 166 strikes against. So it's really more of a fight for me to avoid. I think Dern will be more popular than Torres because she has the higher ceiling with the submission potential. All of her subs are in round 1. So if she gets that, then she has a good chance at the optimal. But if she doesn't get it in round 1, I just don't see her scoring a whole lot of points here. So I'm going to take Torres to win this fight on the cards, but she probably scores 10x or less. So I'm not too interested in DraftKings. The only thing that does interest me about Torres is that nobody else is going to like her either. And I could see her putting up 85 or so points, and maybe that gets it done as a slight underdog on the card. So ownership purposes, I might have a little bit of exposure to Torres, but I might fade Dern. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, man, it's tough to fade Dern because that win possibility comes with a high score, right? If she does figure out how to get the takedown, she probably can get a submission. It does score well. So I need a little bit if I'm making 150. If I'm making 20, maybe not. But if I'm making 150, I need a little bit.
There,
yeah. And I already bet Torres to win the fight. So I definitely think she should win and she should keep it standing. But I agree with you also. You can't land massive volume when you're also putting yourself in a stance that's prepared for a takedown defense, for a takedown. So that affects the volume. Like when she was fighting, actually, Angela Hill, I believe, got takedowns against Torres, but partially because Torres isn't expecting it, right? Like if you're a fighter and you're expecting a takedown, you can't swing wildly because they duck it and take you down. So you have to, anytime a fighter is showing the takedown, you have to find a little more cautious. That's why those fights don't have as much volume. They don't score as well. But just these numbers on screen, I mean, this is horrific. Takedown accuracy of 10% for a grappler. Only 0.5 takedowns on average per fight. This girl cannot get a takedown. So the fact that Torres doesn't have great traditional takedown defense, I don't think it matters. I think if you're just resisting at all against Dern, she can't get you down. Now, she might be training these things. She might get better from fight to fight. But I will say, and I think you would agree, I haven't seen any of that. I haven't seen it yet. Like, we haven't seen it with our eyes, which is really weird.
Yeah, all the time she's spent improving her striking should have been spent with a world-class wrestler teaching her how to get takedowns, because then you're an elite athlete if you can go out there, take down whoever you want, and be the best submission artist in WMMA. That would be dangerous, but an average striker isn't going to cut it.
Who can't get a takedown. It ruins your best skill if you can't take your opponent. I don't understand how that is not the focus of her training every single day, but it probably is. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe it is. Maybe she'll come out and get a takedown. I feel like if I got, all right, Big Mark, if I went into training and I was like training wrestling, now I'm not saying I could take, Tisha Torres down, but an untrained female, I could probably get a takedown.
Yeah, maybe one, and then be gassed out, and it'll just
be gassed out and
go downhill from there.
Yeah, they'd have to be completely untrained and not an MMA fighter at all. All right, let's get to the main events here. But for real, Mackenzie Dern, if you're watching and you're not, get a wrestling coach. Train for takedowns. 10% is not good. All right. First fight of the main card. And by main card, I mean the big three. We got Kazmat Chimaev taking on Gilbert Burns. Chimaev coming in minus 525, Burns plus 450. I'm going to point out one interesting thing here. If you need more reasons to like Kazmat, he's much bigger than Burns. Much bigger. This is a 6'2" badass man. okay, against the 5'10" guy. He is significantly larger than Burns. Burns has fought at 155 in his career. Kazmat, I feel like, would be pretty good fighting at 260. No problem. I think Kazmat could be the #1 heavyweight if he decided to. That's how badass he is. But how do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I'm sold on Chimaev. I think he's the real deal. I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the division, and the striking is there as well. We've never seen him in the third round, so we don't know how his cardio is, but I hear he's just a cardio machine. So apparently he is just the full package, and he's going to be a lot bigger than Burns, as you mentioned here. I think he's going to be too much for him on the feet. I think he gets a first-round knockout on Burns here. But this is a great test to see if he is the real deal, because Burns is, top 5 or so in the division. And I don't know that you want to go out there and get takedowns on a guy against Burns, who's one of the best grapplers in the division. I don't see Burns having wrestling success himself. I think he would probably have to get a reversal or a lockup, something from the bottom. Maybe he can land a big shot as well. He's got power on the feet as well. We haven't seen Chimaev's chin tested, but I'm just kind of all around sold. I don't know that I'm gonna pick anyone over Chimaev. If I am picking anyone, it's Usman. I'll take Chimaev over Covington right now. That's how sold I am. I think Covington could actually beat Adesanya. I see this guy being a multiple division champion. He just seems like the real deal. I haven't seen a single flaw yet. Maybe we see something like that this weekend, but I'd rather take the shot on the favorite rather than the underdog shot here. I'm going to fade Burns. I want at least, 50% Chimaev, but I'll probably be closer to 65, 70%, something like that. The only issue is that I like all 3 of the top guys. And I mentioned, I think it's going to be 1 or 2 of those top guys on the optimal lineup. You can't put all 3 in there because there's only 6 lineups that you can make if you're putting all 3 of those guys. So you're not being tricky if that's what you're trying to do. Everyone who's putting in 150 lineups and probably has all 6 of those lineups included there. So I think that's going to be the key, is figuring out which guy not to use. And I originally, when I was doing my ownership, I had Chimaev as the highest owned, but then I was like 10 points short or something like that. So I just threw those onto Volkanovski and Jan, and I ended up being like exactly the same on all 3. But I feel like Chimaev is most likely to be the highest owned. And this is a 3-round scheduled fight. So if there's a reason to not use Chimaev, it's because we got 2 title fights who can score more here. But that's going to be the same thing I say when we get to those 2 fights. So I don't know, man. Pick your poison. Hopefully you can get the right 2 or 1. But I would advise you not to use all 3 in the 200K tournament, because you're not going to be contrarian at all doing that.
There ain't too many of them. I can probably display. I'm running through. Here's the second one. There's not too many versions. Listen, of the 3, Kazmat is my favorite of all 3. The least for me personally is going to be Piotr Jan, because he's just not automatically going to score well in his fights. It's not his style. So, and
I might change your mind on that, because I went in with the same thoughts, but I ended up changing my own mind.
The one thing, we'll talk about that when we get. There's not much to talk about here. I got nothing left to say. I will never fade Kazmat Chimaev. He is the guy. I'm buying the hype. You know how I love to. Yuri Prozichnaya, that guy. I'm like, nah, I'm fading the hype, right? And I'm wrong, right? Okay, he does great. You fade the hype. I am not fading the Kazmat Chimaev hype. I agree with you 100%. I think he has a chance to be the only guy to really test Usman. I think he has a legitimate fight against Colby, though I am not absolutely 1,000,000% convinced he beats Colby. Colby's my guy. We'll see. I'd love to see that fight. But Burns gets whooped by Colby and Usman. So, this is a step down relative to the most elite. Of course, this is the best guy that Kazmat has ever fought. If you needed some reason for something, that's the reason. This is the best guy that he's ever fought. But beyond that, I think Kazmat's the real deal. I will not have any exposure to Burns. I'm not hedging it. I'm not DFS, nothing. I'm going all in on Chimaev here. That doesn't mean he's in all of my lineups, but he's probably in most of them. It's probably in most of them. All right, but I do want to hear you convince me about Piotr Jan. So next up, we've got Piotr Jan taking on Aljamain Sterling, with Jan coming in at minus 450, heavy favorite, and Sterling plus 400. We've seen this fight before. Big Marley. Okay, refresher. In the first fight, Aljo comes on strong with a lot of volume. He's just going crazy. Jan kind of covering up, but every time he throws a punch, you see the physical pain coming from Aljo. Like, dude, this guy's powerful. Jan starts to take over the fight, round 3. Still, though, and this is the observation that I made, that I think he would not go to the ground with Sterling. He had a most definite game plan, and there was a lot of Sterling lying on the back doing this, and Jan kicking the leg, not wanting to jump down. He did not want to grapple with Sterling. I don't think he needs to worry about grappling with Sterling. I think he'd be fine, but he definitely didn't want to grapple with Sterling. That was very clear. Jan really taking over in the 3rd and 4th rounds as Aljo got tired, and then the illegal knee. So that is how the first fight went down. We all saw that Jan was winning that fight, and he was going to win it in the end. So do you see this exactly the same? Is there anything that changes about the way you see this one going down that you think, hey, Jan might score better?
Well, I mean, he scored great in that first one. He had 7 takedowns against Sterling. He had over 4 minutes of control time. I think he can do that again here. I think he can get takedowns when he wants them. I think he can survive on the ground. I think he can rack up strikes. He has 8 knockdowns in his last 5 fights. One of the most powerful guys in the division. I think he could finish Sterling in any round. He could dominate, win all 5 rounds on the feet, mix in wrestling whenever he wants to. He would have scored 130 points had that been a legit knee in the first fight. 130 points is more than Chimaev has ever scored. So I think that's one reason to use him. He's 100 cheaper than Chimaev as well. He has 5 scheduled rounds here. Not only would he have scored 130 points in that fight, he scored 154 against Aldo the fight before. And he only knocked him down once. Knocked Faber down 3 times with the fight before that.
The Aldo fight was it's just a barn burner. And, 194 strikes landed, knockdowns. Yeah, that was nuts.
He dominated him like on the ground for the most part, 258 total strikes. But he could do that against Sterling here. Like, Sterling looked great in those first 2 rounds. But he started to gas hard, and he looked for his way out in the 4th round because he knew it was not going to go his way, having to go another, round and a half or whatever it was with Jan. I think Jan would have ended up finishing him in one of those rounds. So that's what I'm going to pick here. Jan knockout in round 4 or round 5. But I think he could get it in any round, and I think he could score the most on the card. So I definitely like Jan more than I did coming into the week. My first lineup that I made on on Monday or something like that, I was like, God, I want all these guys. I was like, but I don't know. I'd rather go with the guys who I think are more of wrestlers. I'll throw Chimaev, I'll throw Volkanovski in there, and I'll fade Jan. But I've also heard more people throughout the week say that as well. And then just looking at the stats, my thoughts just weren't true. I think he could go out there and grapple more than these other guys. So I'm on some Jan. And surprisingly, I ended up making 20 lineups last night, hand building 20 lineups. And Jan is my highest owned fighter on the card. I did not expect that going into the card, but Jan is my highest owned guy on the card. But at the same time, Sterling is the only one of the 3 underdogs in the big fights that I'm interested in. I think he's the most live underdog. I think he could have success, with pace as well. He's had a neck surgery. If he was dealing with a neck injury his whole career, and now he's like a new improved man, that's scary. I mean, this guy's good. He's good everywhere, but he's one of the best wrestler grapplers in the division. Would not shock me to see him choke out Jan here, but I think he probably needs to get a submission to get it done. I just don't know that he can win 3 rounds on the scorecards because Jan's going to pick it up as the fight moves along. Can't wait for it, though. Looking forward to it, but give me Jan.
That one should be awesome. Do you think that Jan was clearly not going for takedowns in the first 2 or 3 rounds, and not even jumping on top of Sterling when he was on his back? He would just a lot of those 7 takedowns. And again, when you watch the fight, he would throw him down. Then Sterling would just do this, and Jan would not jump on top. He would just nope, get back up. That's what scored it. That's what got the points. Jan could get a takedown, but he didn't engage in the grappling very much. And then later on, he didn't mind. So in that 4th round, that's when you get the control time happening in that fight. He was like, this guy's gas. But do you think he learned not to be scared of the submission game of Sterling? Because he clearly was avoiding it early.
I would still try and avoid trying to grapple with Sterling in rounds 1 and rounds 2 while he's fresh, while you're not slippery yet. I just think it would be smart when you can win the striking, even though he wasn't winning the striking in those first 2 rounds. It was just because of volume. I mean,
yeah.
If Sterling is to win those first 2 rounds on volume again, he's probably going to start falling apart as the fight moves along, and Jan will up his volume as the fight moves along. So that's just not going to be great for Sterling. And if Jan wants to make that any different, then he can go out there, throw more volume in the earlier rounds. So I don't know. I mean, I just like this fight. It's in, I believe it was 85 or 90% of my lineups. So this is my favorite fight on the card.
Philosophically, how do you feel about, like, obviously I'm not, for me, I'm not a big bet anyone who's minus 500 guy. I don't bet that. Philosophically, how do you feel about parlaying these types of fights? Do you think it's worth it, or no value is no value? Doesn't matter.
I mean, I don't like to pay juice on more than 2 leg parlays, so I didn't do it. I think I do have them in like some shitter parlays when I'm like rounding off my balance or something like that. So like, I have, maybe it's Jan and Volkanovski, something that'll close out a decent parlay like that. But no, I didn't make any official parlay with these big 3. But I do think if you're just going out there to watch this card, you want to win some money, that's probably your safest path to a win, is just parlay these big 3 guys. I didn't do it personally, but I'm also not against it. I just didn't do it because I don't think that there's any value in these lines. I think that it's lined about right, if not a little bit too wide. So that's why I stayed away from it. And it wouldn't shock me to see Jan get choked out, or Volkanovski, find a way to get choked out. Something, I don't know. But I do think they're all 3 pretty safe wins here.
I also want to point out, John's mentioning Aljo said this or that in his conference, something up his sleeve. But I will say Aljo looked the best I've ever seen him look. He looks larger physically than I've seen in the past. Like, he looks to be in very, very good shape. And maybe Aljo, after like, if you're training for this and you've had a year since the last fight and you've felt what it feels like to go up against, I mean, there's a lot of hate for Aljo out there. And I get. By the way, the hate for Aljo should be more about the fact that he's like taunting that he's the champ, not of how he won. That was a legit illegal knee, and he was legitimately knocked out. There was no coming back, I think, from that. What's that?
He was not knocked out. It was a legitimate illegal knee.
Would you come back from that? Why would you
just got shot if you get knocked out? That's
what good would it do Aljo to be like, no, I'm fine, give me 5 minutes? Like, he did the right thing there.
Yeah, I mean, he did the right thing, but it was a complete act job. I mean, going out and saying that you don't know where you were or anything like that. The whole acting job was terrible acting, by the way.
And then afterwards ruined it
at the end. Like, and he knew right away, like when he's down there acting like he's dead, when they're like fights off, he's like, oh no, why? Like, you know exactly what you were doing. You were taking the win.
The fact
so that's, I mean, yes, you're a clown for that, for acting like that in a title fight, taking the belt that way. But at the same time, that's the only way you're getting that belt. So go ahead, do your thing, Aljo.
I think he did the right thing. I think the clown part is the acting afterwards, the bullshit, and then the walking around like, I'm the champ. You ain't the champ. All right. You're not the champ. You won it a certain way. Fine. You have the belt. But what he did achieve for himself was another big money fight. Good for him. I don't have any problem with
it. UFC gold.
Yeah. My issue is much more with, walking around like talking shit. No, you're not the champ, dude. You're not the champ. So anyway, we'll find out who the champ is tomorrow. Maybe he does have something up his sleeve. We'll see, but I don't think so. Yeah. All right.
I think he's the most live underdog. It wouldn't shock me at all. I don't know. I might only have like 10% or so, but I have 0% Burn, 0% Korean Zombie.
Yeah. So here we are, Korean Zombie. Listen, we all love Volkanovski right now. This guy, quite honestly, surprised me. I think he shocked a lot of us. Not everyone. I'm sure he's now minus 680 up against Korean Zombie plus 555. And, Big Marley, I don't know. I expect, Volkanovski's been a good scorer for DraftKings purposes. He has wrestling. He has all of the stats that we want. But how do you see this one going down? Do you see a grappling heavy affair at all? Do you see him, doing enough here? Is it a fast finish? You sound like Volkanovski's a massive takedown numbers. How does he score well in this one?
Yeah, I mean, he could do it all. He's a high-paced striker. He's a good wrestler. So I don't know. I mean, even if you're his coach, I don't have a great game plan for you. Do whatever the hell you want to go out there, just be you. That's really the game plan for you. He's better than Zombie everywhere, in my opinion. Maybe if they're in a BJJ competition, maybe Zombie's the better submission artist, but he's not the better wrestler. And he's not going to be the better or higher volume striker here. So I just think that Volkanovski's the minute winner. And if Zombie is to win, it's going to be a flash finish, whether it's a flash knockout or a flash submission. That's really his only shot here. If that happens, he's going to score well, probably be on the optimal lineup. But I'll take my chances that he does not finish Volkanovski. And I think Volkanovski just goes out there and wins for probably all 5 rounds, to be honest with you. But he would probably be my least favorite of the 3 because he's got, 100-point decisions. I don't think 100 is going to do it on this card. And I also don't think he's going to get 136 like he had against Ortega in his last fight. So I think we're looking at like 110 or so on this fight. He's the most expensive guy on the card. Does 110 get it done? I don't know, man. That's the tough call. Is just which one of these guys are you going to use? So if you can make the right combination, then you're going to be live for this 200K possibly, but you got to stick with 1 or 2 of these guys at most. And if I'm making one lineup now, or originally it was going to be Volkanovski, Chimaev in it. I believe I changed my lineup to Volkanovski. No.
Jan Chimaev, right?
I believe that's what I have now. No.
Yeah. So, I mean, there you go. So, I mean, these are decisions that we're going to have to make. And I feel like it's an anomaly that this guy, that he landed 214 strikes against T-City. That's not been the pace that he normally keeps in fights. He had every opportunity to land as many strikes as you can ever land in a fight against Max Holloway, and he was landing between 135 to 155, which in a decision situation is more of a 95 score. So everything you said right there, there is a definite path to Volkanovski winning a high volume decision and scoring 95, 96 fantasy points. There ain't no, Chimaev's not walking out of his fight less than 100. Like Chimaev may never have a fight in his UFC career where he doesn't put up 100. And, if we look at what happened I think Jan has that path too. Jan knocks him out in the 3rd round after getting volumed in the first 2, and he scores an 87. There is a path.
Yeah, I agree.
Chimaev to me is the most locked in of the 3, and he only has 3 rounds to do it. But I don't think I don't think it matters. He's
also the biggest question mark of the 3, just because we don't know how he looks in competition. We don't know how he looks in the 3rd round if it gets there. But yeah, I'm sold. And as John mentioned in the comments, Volkanovski seems like he really wants a finish in this fight because he's getting all these decisions, and this is a late notice opponent here. It's not a scheduled title fight here. It's a guy that really doesn't deserve the title fight, and he's getting it anyway. So a decision over Zombie is almost a bad look, in my opinion. So you really got to go out there and put a stamp on this guy to try and put your legacy out there anyway. So I think he does go hard for a finish here.
I think he will, but why is he ever not going hard for a finish? Like, what the hell has he been doing before? I think guys say this stuff. Like, what were you doing before? You weren't going for finishes? What were you up to?
I mean, Holloway, just a tough guy to finish. Same with Ortega. Ortega takes a million punches and just won't go down. You would think he could finish Aldo, but that's only 3 rounds. I bet he would have finished him if it was a 5-rounder. He finished Mendez. I don't know. I think I picked him to win the decision, but
Elkins.
I could definitely see him.
When he fought Darren Elkins, he wasn't going for the finish. Like everybody finishes Elkins at this point. So I don't know. I think I mean, he could say that, but he probably wants to finish every fight. He's just not getting him. So this thing goes to decision. I'm telling you, Big Marley, that there is now. I think they'll be wrestling in this one. That's the part that's being left out. I do think Volkanovski will go for takedowns, but in general, this goes to decision. We might be looking at a sub 100 score, and that's where these other names become of interest. It's not likely, but there's a reasonable scenario where that happens. So I think that's what you want to keep in mind when you're mass multi-entry, you're making a bunch of lineups. Drafts is like, what if Jan doesn't score well? What if Jan and Volkanovski?
Yeah, that's the path to get contrarian. If Volkanovski and Jan put up 90 points, then you get Chimaev and some of these other Malott, Hernandez. That's your path to an easy solo victory right there.
Like Fluffy comes in and gets a 60-second submission and scores 130, and you don't have him because you got those two expensive guys. So, or two guys like that. I think you want to get, we talked a pregame about like how you get unique on this card. I'm going to put something up here. And listen, I'm not recommending this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is likely to win, but every lineup will have two of these three in it. 90% of the lineups will have two of Volkanovski, Chimaev, Jan. And the way to get unique on this card is to only have one of them.
Yeah. I like it.
Is it going to work?
I don't have many of my 20 lineups with one, but I did make sure to, like, while I was building, to try and make it a point to have, a couple.
You got to have a couple. If you that's the most unique approach to the card. Only have one, and then that means you have to play Ian Gary or Mike Malott or Hernandez.
Rosenstroik. Yeah, I mean, all those guys are pretty good range.
Yeah, that's how you get unique. All right, we are down to the kill shot, Big Marl. One player, one fighter, probably low-owned, that could give you some edge on this card if they get that win. Somebody you want to go over the field on and just like take my shot. I'll even take a strategy of that sort. But
I got a couple in mind, so you go ahead and give yours first.
All right. Oh, you're throwing at me first. Okay. All right. So my kill shot for this card, man, I almost want it to be a strategy of just loading up on a particular fight, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight up with Josh Fremd here as an underdog play. I love the inside the distance odds on this fight. I don't think Fluffy Hernandez is all that good in general. So I need cheap guys. I'm going to go with Josh Fremd, but I could probably say the same for Mickey Gall. I don't really differentiate that much between him, Gall, and Santos, or even Weeks. So I'm just going to kind of throw them all in the mix, but I'm picking one. I'm picking Fremd.
Yeah, that's who I was going to take as well.
Nice.
But I'll go with Marcin Tybura. He gets 3 takedowns, wins 3 rounds. And if you're on the ground for half the fight, probably going to score all right too.
There you go. I know that's the Vince kill shot as well. So with Fremd, Vince and I talked about that one beforehand. Listen, you want a bigger kill shot concept? I'm just going to conceptualize it. It's, Weeks, Santos, Gall, Fremd. That's pretty much the group where I think the winner is going to score well enough. If those guys win, they should score well enough to have a pretty good outcome. So, yeah, UFC 273. This is an awesome card. Big Marl, any plans for the card? You going to Buffalo Wild Wings, B-Dubs?
I am going to B-Dubs.
You are?
Street. Yep. That's been my new spot for the last, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 pay-per-views. Because since they upped the price to $75 or something like that, it's almost just my way of boycotting it. I just go down the street, have a couple wings, watch the fights, because they don't charge to get in there. It's usually not too packed either. And that's what I don't like, is just when it's real packed. I got a bunch of money on the line, some assholes screaming for the guy that I'm rooting against. Like, that's what I don't like being around. So this B-Dubs works out for me.
I just wish those wings were a little better. I love
if you get enough to drink, they taste better.
Yeah, you got to drink a little bit. I wish that food could level up a little bit at the B-Dub.
Maybe Indiana B-Dub's better than that New York City.
It probably is. It probably is. The mall one by me, or the Manhattan one is horrific. All right. That's going to do it for the kill shot, guys. Remember, promo code opening day at DFS Army, it doesn't just get you MLB. That's VIP. That's everything, including the MMA product, Domination Station Optimizer. We got that for MMA. We got it for NASCAR. We got it for MLB. Our MLB is incredible. Like I said, the optimizer just makes it so easy to attack tournaments. You don't have to know anything. That's the beauty. Get signed up right now. Promo code opening day. You've got probably until this Sunday with that code. Then it's gone. Gonna regurg it.
Yeah, get in there.
Right before the NBA playoffs. Cover that too. All right.
Dominate Saturday to build up your bankroll for some MLB and NASCAR.
Hell yeah. That'll do it for the kill shot. Good luck on Saturday attacking this. Good luck with your bets. I've given out 2 bets on this card so far. I might have more, but I don't think so. I think it's just I'm going to go with those 2 slight plus money plays, Big Mar. I don't know if I'm going to do anymore. I don't want to do a stupid parlay.
I like it. I have a bet on one of those two as well. And
confirmation.
Yes.
That's
and
confirmation.
Then, Sun Tzu makes my other underdog. Makes me like
what's that
more as well.
Oh, I bet it's. I think I know. But if you want Big Marley's picks, bigmarley.com. All right. Deuces, everyone. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.